everyone for joining. This is, I think, the 7th now Women in Live Music Weekly Webinar, which, I don't know, it's been a real journey for me, actually. I started these being really nervous about talking to a room full of strangers on a webcam, and now it's just like, whatever, I'm totally cool with it. For those who don't know who we are, Women in Live Music is a European non-profit organisation that we started at the beginning of 2018, because currently women only make up a very small percentage of the live music industry. And we believe that diversity we believe in diversity and that the music industry is a place for everyone. So we started this organisation to try and grow a positive community and share our knowledge, skills and opportunities with the aim to equalise the gender balance in the years to come. Part of the way we do this is through job opportunities, workshops and online webinars such as this. So thank you very much for joining. Please type any questions you have today in the chat and I will read them out. Now I'd like to introduce Nathalie Candel, who is going to be doing a presentation today all about volunteering as a means to get your foot in the door of the live music industry. Nathalie, over to you.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. Hannah, please tell me when it's happened correctly. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So yeah, I'm talking about volunteering today as a way of gaining experience and starting a career in the live music industry. Let's see. How does this work? Oh, there we go. So I've put in a little brief outline here of what I'm talking about, just in case you have any questions, then you know when I'm going to talk about these things. So I'm going to start with who am I and why am I talking about volunteering? What are the benefits of volunteering, where you can find opportunities, some of the ethics surrounding volunteering, professional etiquette and how to impress while you're volunteering. And then everyone's big question, what to do during the COVID-19 crisis. I've been joining most of the Women in Live Music webinars over the past few weeks, and I've seen some sort of recurring questions coming up, including how to gain experience and how to start a career, but also what to do now there's no gigs on. All right, so who am I? I'm a freelance tour manager, event manager, merchandiser, and everything in between. Here are some of the artists I've worked for on the left, some of the festivals I've worked for on the right, and in the bottom is sort of the other box. So for the artist, I mainly work as a tour manager, which in all of the cases has always meant I'm also the driver and the merchandiser. So I do all of those at the same time. Some of the artists I've just been merchandiser, for example, John Cooper Clarke, and sometimes someone just asks me to drive or whatever, and I'm flexible, I can do all of those things. For the festivals, for Future Yard, I was the festival manager, Liverpool Psych Fest, volunteer coordinator, and I started out as a volunteer for that festival. And then some of the others, it's been anything ranging from campsite management to stagehand to runner, driver, artist liaison, all of that. And then in the sort of other box, I wanted to mention 212 Music Group, who they get contracted by festivals to provide staff and logistics. And through them, I worked for The Great Escape. There's Bidolito magazine in Liverpool, who are not just a magazine, they also do loads of engagement in the community. So they organize all kinds of events, artist mentoring programs, festivals, and all of that. I was project manager for the Jams, also known as the KLF, who returned after 23 years of not doing anything with their career. And then there's the Liverpool Everyman and Playhouse, where I've done a technician's course, which was a sort of youth theatre course, and it was free. You just had to apply and do an interview for it. And then it was a year-long hands-on free course where you actually do tech for shows that they put on with the youth theatre groups. And by doing that, they then hired me as a casual technician as well. And I've done technician work on a few pantos, and last year on Sweeney Todd as well. So that one is part of my repertoire as well. So here's a couple or 3 pictures. There's me while I was with Dreamwife at All Points East, which I was a very happy tour manager then because it was so well organized. Artist liaison was amazing. The stage crew was just amazing. So that was a really great experience. Top right, I was a runner for Into the Great Wide Open in the Netherlands. And I was driving artists from the airport to the festival site, and I made loads of contacts doing that. And that was really good. And the team was amazing as well. And bottom right, I was the merchandise manager on the festival side for Lovebox. Frank Ocean had a sort of, how do you say, you had to like order what t-shirt you wanted, and you could choose the colors you wanted and the graphics you wanted, and they screen printed it on site. So that was a really very different experience of doing merchandise, which I'd never come across before. So that was a really cool job as well. So I am Dutch, I'm from the Netherlands. I moved to the UK in 2013. I did a bachelor's degree in musicology in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And then I moved to the UK to study at University of Liverpool, where I did a master's in music industry studies. Sometimes people ask as well if you need a degree to work in music. No, you don't. There's so many different people who've come from all kinds of different areas and studies, and it was not necessary that they had to do an event or a music course at all. But I wanted to study, I wanted to do a course. Why not do something that I'm interested in and that might come in handy? There are things I've learned there that came in handy, but it's not that you have to do a course to work in music at all. So yeah, but I really enjoyed doing it, and doing courses and getting a student loan meant that I had time and money to do volunteer work as well. So it meant that I could do the experience next to my course while I was studying. While if I had a full-time job, I might not have been able to do that. I've been self-employed since 2014, which is the same moment that I did my first tour. I wanted to say lucky, but I also worked hard to get there, to have my first tour only, I think it was less than 2 months after finishing my dissertation. I deliberately chose to interview people for my dissertation who work in the industry, with the thought that maybe getting to know them and interview them might help me to get work. And so one of the managers I interviewed was Michelle, who manages Mary Epworth and Young Knives and Gravenhurst. And I interviewed her, and I said to her in the interview, as you know, I'm finishing my degree soon, so I will be looking for work if you hear about anything. And her artist, Mary Epworth, was support act on a tour for Welcome to Night Vale, and their tour manager was hospitalized after the second show. And just so you know, it wasn't a tour accident or anything. It was an underlying health issue that suddenly came to the surface during the tour, which was very unfortunate. So she asked me if I could help them out with merchandise, because that's what the tour manager was doing as well. So I did that for one night, and spoke to the people from Welcome to Night Vale as well. And they asked, like, how do you know Michelle, and what is it you want to do? And I said, I want to be a tour manager. So they then said, well, give us your email address and we might be able to recommend you to someone. And I thought, yeah, that would be great for the future. Not knowing that the next morning they emailed me asking if I wanted to join them for the rest of the tour because they needed someone. And that was my first tour. I joined them at like 5 days notice. So that was really great. And then they invited me to come to America as well the next year. So I was in America for 2 months, which was really amazing. And so why am I talking about volunteering? I started volunteering in 2011 while I was studying my undergraduate degree. I did an internship at a venue in, the screens are in front of the words, in 2012, is that right? Yeah. It was a venue called Vredenburg, which no longer exists. They merged with Tivoli now, and now it's called Tivoli Vredenburg. And anyone on here who's toured in the Netherlands, they must know it. It's a massive building. It's got like 5 different rooms inside, and it's really well run and great acoustics and all of that. And it was a marketing internship because there were no other internships at venues or in music companies. It was always marketing. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do anything, then I want to work for a venue. So I soon enough found out I did not like to work in marketing. So I asked the producers who run the shows whether I could maybe shadow the stage manager or help with a show. So they booked me in as a stagehand. It was unpaid because I didn't have any experience. And I think one of my first load-ins was for the XX. And yeah, immediately I just fell in love with working on stage and working on a show. Marketing was talking about the show and getting people to come to the show, but working on stage, it's like you make the magic happen. Like you're working towards putting that show on, and it gives a real good, I don't know, a satisfying sort of proud feeling. And so I just from then on was working the hours I had to do for marketing. But whenever I wasn't working for marketing, I asked the producers to book me in on the shows. So I was shadowing stage manager, helping the stage hands, and in exchange I got to eat and crew catering, which at the time was amazing as a student. The chef there was amazing as well. So yeah, that was my internship, which I can recommend internships if you have enough money to do something like that, because often you don't get paid for it. But yeah, and then while I've been volunteering as well during my studies, I had opportunities arise for working at other festivals, volunteering at other festivals, people I kept in touch with who I later worked for. And eventually I became a volunteer coordinator myself at Liverpool Psych Fest. And so I have the experience from the other side, from being the person who looks after the volunteers rather than being a volunteer. And still today, I will shadow or volunteer if it's a way for me to learn new skills or it's worth it for me. So for example, in January and February, I shadowed Bamo. She won the Women in Live Music Award for Best Backline Technician in December. And Mali from Women in Live Music put me in touch with her. And I shadowed her to learn more about backline tech. And she was really amazing. And I learned so much from it. So that was really great opportunity. And I'll still volunteer if it's like a charity event or fundraiser or anything like that. So I'm talking about volunteering because I've got loads of positive experience. So I feel like I've learned a lot from it and I still do it every now and again. So I can recommend it, and that's why I'm doing this webinar. So here's a couple pictures. On the left is me volunteering at Roskilde Festival. I forgot this guy's name, but we went over with a group of 30 Dutch people. It was an exchange between 2 festivals, one in the Netherlands, and it was organized by Gimle in Denmark. So 30 Danish volunteers came to the Netherlands for our festival, and we all went to Roskilde, and every Dutch person got paired up with a Danish person. And this was my Danish person for the day. And yeah, Roskilde is an amazing festival. I can really recommend volunteering there. It was amazing. On the right is in Iceland, where I was volunteering for Secret Solstice Festival. And they have a festival site, but they also do special side events. So this one was like a rave in a lagoon. So I had to drive the artist Kerry Chandler. It was like 1.5 hours outside of Reykjavik. I had to drive him to this lagoon, and they set up all the tech there, and he did a DJ set. And I was told that all I had to do was drive, so I could actually go for a swim as well, which was great. So, what are the benefits of volunteering? Why should you volunteer? I think that there's generally two types of volunteers, especially at festivals. So on the one hand, you've got someone who wants a free ticket and they're happy to do some work for it. So they just purely go for that reward of, I just want to go to the festival, happy to do some work. And then there's the other one, which I'm assuming most of you are here for this one. You're someone who wants to gain real life experience in a festival role. And so for those people, the benefits that you get from volunteering is you are figuring out what it is that you want to do. There might be people who really, really know what they want to do already. But in my experience, while I was studying, I knew I wanted to do something with music, but I had no idea what. Like, it could have gone anywhere. But also, I didn't really know the structure of the music industry. I know there's a festival and there are bands, but what are all the roles? What are all the jobs? What is even possible? Someone could have said to me, you know, I'm a front of house engineer, and I wouldn't have known what it meant. Or someone can say, I'm an A&R manager for a record label. Sounds impressive, but I had no idea what it was. So when you start to actually work for an organization, whether that's paid or unpaid, you learn what the structures are, what the possibilities are, and you go, that sounds good. When I first found out what a tour manager was, I was like, yeah, sounds great. So especially when I worked at the venue, I learned so much, just, yeah, what all the different people are, what a team comprises of, and all of that. So that is really great. And with the figuring out what it is you want to do, when I started volunteering for festivals, I made it almost a little game of, like, when you apply, you fill out a form and they ask you which roles would you be interested in. And so it would say like stewarding, catering, arts liaison, and all of that. And I made a game of it to only tick the things that I had never done before, because I wanted to experience all the different things. And along the way, I learned, don't like that one, do like that one, didn't like that one. Oh yes, that one was great. So you kind of erase like the things that you don't want to do, so you don't have to focus on that anymore. And so slowly but surely, I found my way towards working on stage, production, event management, that kind of thing. The kind of more you produce a show, you make it happen. That was my thing. And so at these events, you meet people that work at music events. So it's great for networking. You meet people that might employ you in the future, whether that's the festival you're working for, or maybe some of the artists you meet or their crew that you meet. While you're volunteering, you're learning and developing skills, which is just one of the best ones, because in the music industry, everyone says it's all about experience. You can have done a degree that was like 4 years, but you've just been reading out of books and making exams and writing essays, and it doesn't mean you actually know anything about how a live music event works. So the like learning and developing skills, the experience you get, that's like the most important one, and that's what future employers want to see. They want to see that you know what goes on. And then the festivals and events that you volunteer for, you can put them on your CV or resume. It's not just paid work that should go on there. You can list those, and sometimes you don't even have to mention it was volunteer. Like, I've done volunteer roles that were a bit higher up in the ranking, and I just put it down without saying it was a volunteer role, because if I was an assistant volunteer coordinator for a festival in the Netherlands, I did that role. That I didn't get paid doesn't mean I didn't do that role. And then your experiences as well are something to talk about during interviews. Whenever you've got a job interview, whatever it is for, you get it as well for normal jobs. They ask you questions like, give an example of a stressful situation and how you dealt with it, or give an example where you exceeded expectations. And you get those things in interviews, and you can take examples from your volunteer work. So in a volunteer role, you might have, solved a problem of, I don't know, an artist needed something for their rider and it wasn't there. And you managed to get that thing for them, even though it was really hard to get, but you managed it. Something like that, you exceeded an expectation or you solved a problem. And it's good to kind of reflect on those things as well when you've done a volunteer role, to be like, what did I actually get from that? What did I learn? So it's good to reflect on those things, and they're really good to keep in mind when you've got interviews or putting a CV together. Then there's sort of secondary benefits as well that are just nice. You gain free access often to potentially expensive music event. Like if you volunteer for a major festival, often tickets are like £200. So if you get it for free, that's great. You meet like-minded people and you make friends, which those people, the other volunteers, they want to do the same thing as you. So it's really good to network with them as well, because you might be able to exchange, like, I'm volunteering at this festival and the other person hasn't heard of it, and you can apply together. Or who knows, in the future you might one day work with them because you've both started working paid in the music industry. So it's always nice to meet other volunteers as well and network in that way. Making great memories. I know that sounds really cheesy, but as I was talking about some of the festivals I volunteered for, like Roskilde, it's just, that goes in my books as like one of the best festivals I've ever been to. And yeah, like no one can ever take that away from me. It's making memories. Like if you enjoy what you do, like you enjoy volunteering, and that's great. And sometimes as well, you get free food or free merch. When I say sometimes getting free food, my experience from volunteering in the Netherlands was quite different from volunteering in the UK. In the Netherlands, any volunteer role I've done, there was a designated volunteer green room where you all sat together when you went on shift. There was a fridge where you could help yourself to a soft drink. There were snacks. Every volunteer would get a meal voucher and you'd all have a meal together. So they really kind of looked after their volunteers. And then when I moved to the UK and I volunteered at my first UK festival, I was like, excuse me, where's the volunteer room? And they were like, volunteer room? What are you talking about? And there was like no drinks, no meal or anything. And I started to think that, have I become really snotty? But it was just a very different ways of doing things. And so that first festival where I asked those questions was Liverpool Psych Fest. 2 years later, I am the volunteer coordinator, and now there is a designated volunteer room and everyone gets a volunteer meal. So I'm proud to say I've brought some of the European catering over to the UK. So yeah, and then with free merch, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Often you get a volunteer shirt, which is nice as a souvenir. So yeah, there might be some extra benefits in it for you as well. So where to find volunteering opportunities? There's a little picture of me there, volunteer coordinating at Liverpool Psych Fest when I still had brown hair. Well, I will have brown hair very soon. Anyway, so the most obvious one is festivals. Festivals actively look for volunteers. They will actively hire a volunteer coordinator who will make a volunteer rota, who puts on social media that they're looking for volunteers, who reaches out to community groups, to Facebook groups. And so that's kind of the most obvious and often the best organized way of volunteering, because they have actual things in place. So that's really good. Always keep an eye on where they're putting out shout outs for volunteers. And sometimes it is worth just getting in touch with them. The best way is sending an email. If you can't find an email, you can always try via Messenger and ask if they have an email that you can ask for a volunteer opportunity. There's other events that are not necessarily festivals that might make use of volunteers. Again, it might be that they put a shout out, but it could also be that you just kind of get in touch saying you're interested in the event, you'd love to help, or you'd love to volunteer, and check that way. Volunteering at venues is often knowing someone. So for example, I started working as a promoter rep in Liverpool, and I wanted to learn more about stage production. So because I was a promoter rep, I met the sound engineer for one of the venues, and he was really, really nice. And I asked him if I could shadow him for a few shows, and he said yes. And he really showed me loads and loads of stuff in the venue, how everything works, how you set up a backline, how you plug in a stage box and everything, all of that. So it was a fact of had to know someone, but then once I asked, he said yes. You can try getting in touch with a venue out of the blue, but most likely they will kind of go, no, we don't do anything like that. But there are ways to get to know people. Even if you go to a show and you try and chat to someone who works there, who knows, you might be able to ask if there would be a chance that you could shadow and just, you know, watch someone do their job for a day. With promoters, it might be a similar thing. My experience of promoters in Liverpool, they're all sort of one person promoter, so it's a bit more difficult because there's such a small scale. But the way I became a promoter rep, I asked the promoter that I met at Liverpool Psych Fest, and he said he might be looking for a person to run shows for him because he had too much work going on. And he knew that I didn't have any experience of doing that work. So he wanted me to shadow him for a day, unpaid. And then the next show, he would shadow me. So I would do whatever I learned from the previous show. And he would check if I did everything correctly. And from then on, I was a paid member of staff. And I ran the shows by myself and I got paid. So there's ways as well to get to know promoters and do some volunteering that way. You could volunteer via artists and crew. So as I said, I knew or got introduced to Bamo, and she then let me shadow her on a show that she was touring with. Sometimes artists, you might have friends who are in a band who normally perform locally, but they've been asked to come and perform at a festival which is bigger than they've ever done before. And you might be able to say, hey, I can drive the van for you if you want and sell your merchandise afterwards. So small scale like that with artists, and sometimes as well, just if you know someone in an artist crew, you can just ask if you can shadow someone for a day. Often that's not really anything longer than a day. They won't generally take you on tour with them to shadow or anything like that. And then there's charities and community projects, which are often non-profit. They work with loads of volunteers. Think outside the box, like maybe a charity that doesn't have anything to do with music. They might do a fundraiser. They might do like a concert to raise awareness. Community projects might have theatre performances or something like that. And those people too need event managers, technicians, production people. So it's always worth getting in touch with those and saying, this is what I want to do, or this is what I've got a bit of experience with, and you could volunteer there as well. So I want to talk a bit about the ethics surrounding volunteering. So from being in lots of groups on Facebook, including Women in Live Music, UK Touring Crew, event productions, there's many of them. Every now and again it happens where someone posts a job and it is suggested that it is an unpaid role, but you'll get loads of experience, or it's a very low paid role. And there's usually like over 100 comments on them saying someone is taking the piss, or that it's not fair, or it's devaluing jobs or something like that. So I wanted to talk about this because of posts like that. And what to look out for. So at the end of the day, it is your choice to do unpaid work. If someone posts a job like that and everyone says it's not cool and it's unfair, but you want to do that job, then it's your choice. However, I think it depends as well on kind of what the intentions are, because often the people in the comments are right. They often post a job that is a skilled job that's a really long hour, stressful job, and they go, yeah, it's for experience. That's not really cool, because if it's a skilled job, someone should be getting paid for it. And ideally, you would want someone experienced to do that job and not someone who's never done it before. So you just want to look out for a few things. So I've put a few questions in here on this slide saying, like, who is organizing the opportunity? So what I said, like festivals, they have a volunteer coordinator, they have rules in place, they have, you know, there's time restrictions on how long a shift is, you get a reward from it, you get a free ticket or a meal or whatever. So usually from a festival, it's usually like a good opportunity, and you know there's rules in place. What are the intentions, and what is expected of you, and what are you getting from it? So just to take a few examples, so someone, as I said earlier, someone knows a band, they're going to a festival for the first time, and the person themselves go, I could drive for you if you want. And the other one goes, oh, actually, that would be great, thank you. That's kind of a genuine, nice intention, because the person actively wants to do that work, and the other one is just grateful for it. However, if the band themselves is advertising a position because they really need it, and it's completely unpaid, it kind of feels like, well, if you need someone like that, you also should pay them. And there was this really big thing, which is in the past year, I think, someone had posted, and it came from a management company, a role for, it was like a 2 or 3 week tour, and the person would be driving a van and doing merchandise, and it was £50 a day, I think, and they would only get paid on the days that there were shows, and there were many days that there weren't any shows, but still they still had to stay with the tour. And it was a management company that had deliberately posted it in student groups because they thought, well, you know, a student will go for £50 a day. But the role description was very much a role that should be paid, like someone who is driving a van with lots of equipment and selling merchandise. Those are pretty much paid roles, especially if you get on the road with someone for a long time. And so people did a bit of research, and it turned out the management company posting it was from like the same management company as a major artist. So they knew they have some budget. So it just, the intention felt a bit wrong. Obviously, I don't know the details of that. Maybe the intention was perfectly genuine and fine, like, you know, but I would be wary of going for a job like that, because you might think, well, if they haven't thought it through very well, like, is everything else in place? Because if you're only driving and doing merch, then is there a tour manager? Have they organized everything well? Is there insurance in place? And, you know, would you still have to pay for your own food? All things like that. You kind of have to think about it. But as I said, at the end of the day, it is your choice to take a job or not. So there's no right or wrong. But if you feel something is right and genuine, or if you feel actually this sounds a bit dodgy, then just have a think about that, and don't let people take advantage of you so that is better for them. It has to go both ways. You have to get some kind of reward out of it. And that can very well be that you go on a tour where you don't earn anything, but they cover every single expense for you, so you don't lose any money, because you approached them and you said, this is like, I want to learn and I will be proactive, but I don't want to lose any money. And that was the intention. Then I don't see a problem with that. You just have to think about it, is the end of it. So yeah, so keep in mind those questions when you go for an opportunity. Once you work in a role, whether that's voluntary or paid, but obviously I'm talking about volunteering here, it is good to think about professional etiquette and what works to impress people, because you're doing the volunteering as well to make the most of it and to meet people and network. So the main thing is treat your role like it is a job, because how you are as a volunteer reflects on how you are as a member of staff. If you are volunteering and you think, well, I'm not getting paid for this, so I'm just going to walk off like every half hour to go watch a band while the position I'm supposed to be on is being unmanned and all of that, it doesn't look good for you. So you have to see it as, even though you're not getting paid, you are doing a job role. And if you show that you're good at that, then that makes you more desirable to be a paid member of staff. So treat them equally. With regards to like treat it like a job and being professional, always use email for communications and don't use Facebook or any other social media. Sometimes you don't know someone's email address, and a shout out for volunteers or whatever might have been on Facebook. Usually they will post an email address with it. If you want to get in touch with someone and don't have their email address, send them a message saying, hey, can I have your email address? I have a question about such and such festival. And then go onto email. It looks far more professional. Facebook and other social media messengers are just very chatty, and it's not, it's just not a good look. And often people forget about those messages as well. If you're looking for something with regards to work, you will search in your emails. And make sure you use proper language when emailing, and don't use it as if you're sending a text or a chat. So just treat it like a job. Treat it like you would treat someone if you were working in an office together or something like that. And with that as well, even though working in live music, you do work long hours and you work till late, but it doesn't look great if you send someone an email at 3 a.m. I once as well, with regards to the communications, Liverpool Psych Fest, a volunteer, this is a week or 2 weeks after the festival, Facebook messaged me at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night going, hiya, do you know about any paid opportunities? And I just thought, if you're asking me that at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, like, what are you doing right now that you think that is appropriate? And it's not a good look. And so a good trick for that, even if you are still up at 3 a.m. and you think of an email that you wanted to send, use the schedule send button in the email. So I sometimes do that when I'm working on a tour and it's 10 p.m. and the band is still on stage, but I'm sending a couple of emails. I will write them and schedule them to be sent at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning, because that's when most people, like booking agents or whatever, get back to the office. So they'll see it as soon as they get in work, but the timestamp will be very different. So it doesn't look like I was emailing them late at night. So yeah, that always have good email etiquette and use email. Behave professionally when working with artists and their crew, because even though live music seems like a very informal business, it's still work. You're doing a job, they're doing a job. As much as it, to many people, doesn't look like it, an artist does a job. Like, they work really hard and they really need to get into a sort of serious place before they go on stage and all of that. So treat them like you would treat colleagues in work, and don't do or say anything inappropriate, because it reflects bad on the person that you're working for. And yeah, don't go behaving like a fan or anything, because it's not really going to get you anywhere. If anything, they'd rather have fans to be sort of removed from backstage areas than wanting to work with them or wanting to give them an opportunity in the future. Make sure that everyone involved is aware of the T&C, so terms and conditions, I mean with that. I've written after an example from Liverpool Psych Fest as well. There was a volunteer who I felt their whole shift had been kind of looking at their watch at the time to when they could finish. And then, as expected, right on the dot, they came up to me and went, right, I'm finished. Can I get paid now? And I said, you're a volunteer, you're not getting paid. And he said, but such and such, who also works for the festival, said that if you volunteer for a second year, then you get paid. And I volunteered last year. And I said, well, I've never heard of that rule before, and I'm the volunteer coordinator. So I think you need to go and talk to your friend again, because I can't pay you, which is unfortunate that he had that expectation. But in my defense, he never let me know that he had that expectation. In all of our communications in advance, my job role is volunteer coordinator, which is what is at the bottom of every email that I write. All the info that I sent out to him about the role, all was talking about volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. If he had any expectation of getting paid, he should have emailed me and said that this person had said he would get paid and how we can make that happen, because that's what you do in advance. You don't turn around at the end and ask for something that was never agreed. So if you are volunteering or start doing a bit higher paid work or paid work, and for any freelancer or professional or whenever, make sure you know in advance what the terms and conditions are, because like you probably can't get it afterwards if it wasn't agreed beforehand. So that would be a really good one to, as well with professionality, to just talk about the details. And then the golden rule, which I learned at a festival, being early is being on time, and being on time is being late. So even if you arrive on the dot when your shift is supposed to start, technically you're on time, but it looks so much better if you were there a bit before then. It shows that you are proactive, that you're taking it seriously, that you can start the job kind of relaxed and settled in. So if you want to impress the people at the festival, be early, because it looks really good. Few do's and don'ts. Be knowledgeable, and by that I mean, if you are going to volunteer for a festival or event or artist, look up some info. If it's a festival, look at the site map that they might have put on the website, look at the schedule so you know who the bands are that are playing. I'm not saying that you have to know like every single name and what time they're playing, but if someone mentions, what time is such and such playing, that you go, who? But that you are like, oh yeah, I believe this and that, let me look it up for you. So just try and be a bit knowledgeable about what it is you're volunteering at. Again, it's showing that you are proactive, which is my next point. Be proactive. Being proactive just looks really good. It comes across really well. And that's how you make the most of it as well. You can be in a role and sit there and just expect people to constantly ask you what to do, and then you'll do it, which is great. But if you are proactive and you anticipate things, and you might, before someone asks you something, you hear that something has arisen, you might just go up and say, shall I go and solve that problem? Shall I go and move this and that? And that looks really good. And it's showing that you can do stuff by yourself, you can be independent, and it's a really good look. And that as well is how I've sort of picked out volunteers from PsychFest who have done, I've offered paid work in the future because they stood out to me. The opposite of that is, which I've come across a few times as well, is, for example, wristband exchange has suddenly got a surge of people and there's a queue all the way down the road. We need an extra pair of hands on there to just bring down the queue. And I've gone to someone from the artist liaison team, a volunteer, going, can you just help out for an hour just so we can work away the queue and then you could come back here? And, the person being someone who really wants to get experience in artist liaison, who was maybe doing an event manager degree or something like that, went, well, that's not what I signed up for, which is true. And obviously I would never want anyone to do something that they resent or they really don't want to do. But at the end of the day, everyone on a festival team, including the festival manager, including the production manager and the volunteer coordinator and all of those, they're all working towards one goal, which is put on a good show and making the customers happy. So me, as like when I was festival manager for Future Yard, there was a mess up and the building had decided to close before our cleaner was able to mop the floor in the main venue. So I got up early the next day and I mopped the floor before reopening. And you could say, well, you're a festival manager, why are you mopping a floor? Well, because I work for this festival and it needs to happen. So there's nothing that is beneath you if you work in a role and you work towards the same goal. You just have to do what is necessary. So yeah, even though you did sign up to be artist liaison, if the volunteer coordinator goes, can you help out for an hour on this other bit? If you say yes, they appreciate it so much and it looks really good on you. And being proactive is just, yeah, that's the way to go. And at the same time, ask questions. If you ask questions, it looks like you're interested, like you want to improve, like you're curious, you want to learn about what it is you're doing. And when I was doing the internship and I joined the stage crew, I was asking so many questions. And because of that, everyone knew my name. And okay, maybe some people would have said, oh, Nathalie, who asked all the questions. But it's a way to get to know people, because if you don't talk to them, they never get to know you. They don't get to know your name. So asking questions out of interest, that's a really big pro. And as well, that ties in with being passionate. If you're genuinely interested or you care about an event, or you like a specific genre of music and you're enthusiastic about the lineup, that really rubs off on other people. It's if you are enthused, then other people around you will find it pleasant to work with you. And through being passionate, that has helped me as well with securing jobs. In the past, I've unknowingly started talking to someone at a gig when I was the intern, and someone put a flyer in my hand for a festival, and I said to the person I was talking to, oh, have you seen this? This looks like a great festival. And he laughed and said, yeah, that's my festival. And I've gone, wow, that's great. Can I work for you? And he's gone, yeah. So, if you're passionate about something, that's really appreciated. And at the end of the day, isn't that why we all want to work in music? Because we love it so much. So yeah, and a few other do's. Dress professionally. And with that, I don't mean like reconsider your wardrobe. I mean, wear stuff that's appropriate to the job you're doing. As a merchandiser, for big shows, I often get a local merch person to come and help me, because it's a big operation and there's a big count in and out and there's a big queue. So we need multiple sellers. And at one venue, the merch person that the venue had hired for me, she showed up in short shorts and flip-flops, which to me does not seem safe when you're carrying heavy boxes and you're taking out stock and you're, moving around and you're working with these tables and whatever. It would just have been a lot safer if she would have covered her legs, because I've nicked my skin so many times doing stuff like that. And then the flip-flops, drop a box on your foot and, you can go to A&E. So, wear appropriate footwear. That's a really important one. If you're working in production, always wear steel toes. Even if you see other people that don't do it, don't think that's okay. Be safe, wear steel toes. It's a good investment. And there's other sort of protective equipment that you could get. There's trousers that sort of have like extra stuff in the knees. There's you can buy your own high vis, so you have that if it's asked of you. So there's stuff like that. So that's what I mean with dress professionally. It's like being safe and making sure you are protected. If you work in a stage role, wear black, stuff like that. And yeah, what I've said before, use email for communications. It's a big one. A few don'ts. Don't act like a fan. Don't take photos backstage, even if taking photos backstage means that you're taking a photo of yourself with a colleague, because backstage is the private space of the artist. They're not expecting that they are being photographed or filmed there, and that is their space where they get dressed and they get ready for the show. So even if you're just taking a picture of yourself, you don't know what might be in the background, and it's not a good look if you're taking pictures backstage. So definitely don't do that. I generally say don't go taking pictures with artists and posting them online. It's also not a good look. It depends on the situation. Like if you finish your shift and you're on the festival site having fun with all the other customers, and an artist has decided to walk on the festival site to check stuff out, you know, they've chosen to go into the public. And if then someone snaps up a photo, it doesn't look as bad as if you've done that backstage during your work, because as I said, you're both working, and if you're working, you shouldn't be asking for photos or signatures. It's not professional. And then big one, don't post any credentials online, which is wristbands and passes and anything like that, because it's a massive security breach. So even though you see it many times, people who go to festivals, they post a cute picture on Instagram of, look at my wristband, we're here. There's different ways of showing that you're at the festival. There's, you know, festival signs or whatever with the festival name on it where you can show that. It's just that if you post wristbands or like when you have a lanyard with a pass, it's easy for people online to copy that to get in for free. But that's not really the biggest thing. There's, you know, especially with some of the really bad stuff that's happened at live music shows, where people have had really bad intentions of hurting the public. You wouldn't want someone like that to get a hold of a AAA pass, even though they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. We don't want to give anyone on the internet any extra reason to get extra access to any areas that no one should be in. So don't post any passes, but especially not like AAA or something like that. It's just a no-no. And people who've been working in it for years, they still do it, but just, yeah, really don't do it. It doesn't look good. And if someone finds out, you might, you know, they might ask you to like leave the festival site as well. It's happened before. And then just a cheeky, most important of all, don't be a dick. It's something that you might hear people say a lot, especially at festivals, which it's a bit tongue in cheek, but it means like, you know, if you're a nice person and you have good intentions, that's nice. Don't go looking for arguments or anything like that. It's common sense, really. But you might hear people at festivals say that. I've definitely learned that line from working in festivals. And then, so once you've impressed everyone, you want to look at sort of crossing over into doing paid work. And a main one there is let people know what it is you want, because they can't guess it. If you work as a volunteer and say you want to be a tour manager, you might meet a band or another tour manager. And even though they've seen you volunteer and maybe you left a good impression, if you didn't tell them, they don't want to know that you want to be a tour manager. They don't think of you if they ever need an assistant or whatever. They're not just going to go, oh, I like that person, but I actually don't know if that's even what they want to do. So it's good to let people know what it is you want to do. Tell people, I'm volunteering now, but I'd love to have a career in music, or I want to work on a stage crew, or I want to learn more about tech and I'd love to be a sound engineer. Like, it's good to tell people that that is what you want, because that makes them think of you. There are definitely people who have told me stuff, and I then later, whenever it came up, when someone asked me, can you do this event manager job for a day? And I wasn't available. And then I thought, oh, but I know 2 people who would love to do that. And I was able to recommend them. But if I don't know, I don't know. I'm not just going to ask someone just because I liked them. Like, they have to actively want to do that. So yeah, that's definitely a big one. Plus, with like, if you're hoping to get higher up at a festival, it benefits the festival that you're a volunteer, because you're doing unpaid work and they need people to do that, and that is fine. But it's not as if, you know, the festival or the volunteer coordinator is suddenly going to go, oh, I'm going to pay this person now, because it's an expense to them. So they might not necessarily think of you if they have a role coming up. So if you let them know, like if you had a good experience volunteering for the festival, follow it up. Like, send them an email after saying, I really loved volunteering. I had a great experience. I would love to learn more about this. Or you can say, if there's ever any paid roles coming up, I'd be really interested in working for you. And it's a way of just putting yourself on their radar. And they might say, like, we haven't got anything right now, which is often like typical because the festival just finished and they have another year to plan the next one. But it's good to put yourself on their radar and let them know that that is your ambition. Otherwise, they're probably just happy to keep you on as a volunteer on a rolling basis. So that's definitely an important one. Utilize your contacts that you gained while volunteering. Like, use those, stay in touch with people, out, like, because it can work in your favor. Like, be interested in what they do and follow stuff up, even if you've just met someone and you say, oh, well, you know, want to work on a crew, and someone has gone like, oh, if you ever have any questions, here's my business card. Don't let the business card sit around until one day you think of a question. Just sort of the day after or 2 days after, send that person an email and go, it was really nice to meet you. I've attached my CV. Like, if there's anything coming up, I'd be really interested, or I'd love to hear back from you. You know, keep a conversation going and follow stuff up, because if you don't follow up initially, people might forget about you. So yeah, definitely utilized those contacts. The next point is ask for paid roles, which that's again of like letting someone know what you want. So you might have volunteered, but you go, I'm interested in a paid role. And it's like sort of, yeah, letting them know that you are maybe now going to be self-employed, and that you've gained all of this experience and that you feel like you're ready, and it's good to let people know. And then my last one is like, any paid work kind of helps towards getting more paid work. And I mean that in a sense of, sometimes you might get offered some paid work, but it's not really what you want to do ultimately, but it is something that has to do with music. So when you do that paid work, you will meet more people, plus you show that employer that they can trust you in a paid role. So that will help towards getting more paid work. For example, before I became a volunteer coordinator for Liverpool Psych Fest, I stayed in touch with them and I did flyering for their next festival after gigs in town, and they paid me for that. So I was on their payroll, and they knew like I'm someone who can do work around town and who is trustworthy. And so that then led to more paid work, and eventually me becoming the volunteer coordinator. And I started out as a volunteer. And other things like that is like, I know a bar job doesn't sound ideal if you like want to be in a touring position, or you want to be an event manager or festival manager. But if you work like bar work in a venue or at a festival, even that, you are gaining experience in the festival setting or the venue setting. You are meeting people who are also working on the show. You can take that opportunity to talk to people and network, let them know what it is you want to do. So lots of sort of paid jobs I've done in the past, which were mainly to pay for my bills while I was working on getting a freelance career started. They were in sort of music or venue settings, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do. But they've helped me to gain experience and meet people. So yeah, when you start getting paid work, don't be particularly picky, because it will evolve and you will work towards stuff that you do want to do. So yeah, I hope that kind of gives a few ideas for crossing over into paid work. But if anyone has any further questions, feel free to ask. Oh, I put in a few examples. I think I already said that one, like a few sort of crossover situations. So I knew someone who really liked a band and was still learning as well. And the person got in touch with the band after a show in person and was like, I'd really love to work for you if you are doing a tour. and they've kept in touch, and they then did a support tour that they weren't making any money on. And they said, listen, we can do this ourselves. We don't need someone, but we know that you would really like to do that. So you can come along with us and help us with our tour. And we will promise that you won't lose a single penny and pay for everything. And that person was happy with that exchange. They were happy with the expectations and the reward. So it was their choice to say yes. And they then networked with a headliner and got opportunities out of that. So that's kind of crossover situation, I think, because it's not completely like volunteer, but it was unpaid in a way, but they didn't lose any money at all on doing that. And there's also people who kind of work a normal job to fund doing work experience. And obviously that's a little bit what I did as well, because I had a student loan and I had a side job as well. And that meant that I could also do voluntary work because I was sorted for paying my bills. And for example, Bamo, who the backline technician who I shadowed, she said that when she started out, when she was young, she didn't have any experience with setting up stages and stuff, but she knew she wanted to be a backline technician. So she knew a band who were happy to take her with them on tour, and she would learn on the job, but she wasn't getting paid. So I think she said she worked a bar job to save up money so she could continue paying her bills when she was away and she wasn't working. And so that worked for her, and soon with that experience she got, that turned into paid work. And so you can kind of fund your own work experience in that way. And then the last one is paid music related work, which is kind of what I already mentioned, like doing bar work in a venue, maybe working for a merchandise concession, which I've done as well. Or flyering for a festival. Like the work itself might not be what you want to do, but you are working for a music company or a festival. Getting a dry throat, sorry. So yeah, there's a few sort of crossover examples, and sometimes it is just that you found the right person and left the right impression, and they offer you a fully paid job. That first tour I did I was getting paid what the hospitalized tour manager was getting paid, and so they weren't compromising on that, which was amazing. And yeah, that reminds me of a saying which I wanted to put in the slideshow, but I forgot to put in it. Many people like to say someone was in the right place at the right time. So, for example, when I took that merchandise job and I met the people in charge of the tour, and they then offered me the job to become the tour manager on a last minute basis. Some people said, wow, that's lucky, you were at the right place at the right time. But I like to add to that, and I left the right impression. You can be in a perfect situation, and like I've been to many music conferences as well, which by the way are also great to volunteer at. But you go to like networking events, and the name in itself gives this pressure of, I need to come home with like a pile of business cards and 5 job offers, because that's what it feels like when you go to a networking event. But at those events, I was like in the right place at the right time. But maybe that day I was really shy and I didn't really felt like just going up to someone, and I had a few conversations but didn't go really well. So that time I didn't leave the right impression while I was at the right place at the right time. So with all the do's and don'ts, it's about, you are in the right place at the right time, and leave that right impression, because that's the important factor. That's what makes someone want to hire you. So yeah, that's a really good tip. It's like my mantra: right place, right time, right impression. Right. So lots of people have been talking about what can you do now we're all on lockdown. the music business isn't, like the live music business isn't going to continue anytime soon. We know that. So there's lots of people out there who are furloughed. They're maybe unemployed right now. Some of them are maybe still finishing a degree or whatever, and they're wondering, what can you do now? Now you can't go and volunteer at a festival and get that experience. So what can you do now? So there's a few things that offer online training. If anyone has any extra tips, please share them in the comments, because I haven't got very many physical tips for the online training thing. Someone recommended me the NCRQ Safety for Managers, which I believe normally is a paid course, but because of the crisis, they've made it free. And at the end, you do a sort of exam with a tutor as well. So that is a good thing. I've heard it's quite a general safety course, which is fine for anyone who's, you know, new to the industry. And it's definitely important if you know about safety. It works across all festivals, events, concerts. So that's important. And then there's websites like read.co.uk, which are maybe, they're sort of like a database for courses that are available online. So anything you find on there will be sort of linked to another company. So I would just put that as an example, and there's many others of that. So just have a search. And the examples that I put are pure like examples. Think outside of the box. Like there's stuff on like bookkeeping, which is handy for most music roles, because you're often working with like expenses, with admin. Advancing in a way has lots of things to do with sort of admin and bookkeeping. So that might be handy if you know stuff like that. I've seen there's project management courses. I don't know how good they are. Definitely look at reviews for whoever is offering the course, people that have done the course before. And then, yeah, think outside the box. Like, it's not necessarily like you have to do this if you want to work in live music, but maybe learn a language, because if you go on tour, you go to other countries, it's not expected of you that you know every language, but it's good. Like if you can sell merch in French or Italian, you know, it's like just a little bit extra. There might be just handy things that you can find that you're interested in, and in a way you can integrate that in your CV, or when you're applying for a job, you can do like, oh yeah, and by the way, I speak another language, or I've done a project management course and I've actually learned about this, this and that. You know, there things that you can do right now that can help you in the future with that. If you like to read, there's some books that you could read. And again, some of the things I'm going to mention, they're pure sort of examples. Like you don't have to do this. It's just, it might be interesting and you might learn something from it. So one that I do recommend is All You Need to Know About Music Business by Donald S. Passman. This is a book that gets updated every so many years because the music industry is ever changing. It's not just about live music. It's like an overview of how music business works. So it talks about record deals, artist managers, business managers, publishing, copyright, lawyers. So there might be lots of stuff in that you don't necessarily use when you are a tour manager or a festival manager. But if you know how the industry works, it's a big plus. Like if you are a tour manager and you're emailing with a booking agent about a show for a band, you know what that booking agent is, you know who is paying who, and it's good if you have an insight in all of that. There's this one which is called One for the Road, How to Be a Music Tour Manager by Mark Workman. Again, there's not a book that can tell you how to be a tour manager, but this one has like good physical examples of like day sheets, tracking expenses, how to make a budget. So there's stuff like that they're handy tips in there. So I can recommend that one. There's a few more books. I don't know how good they are. I haven't actually read this one. It's called Roadie Inc. I don't know if it's good, but there's stuff you can find like that. Then biographies for artists, they're really interesting. Some managers, music managers and road crew, they have biographies as well. And again, this is not like you must read biographies if you want to work in music, but if you're interested in it, they are fun and they explain lots of things that can happen on the road, and how stuff works. The one that I really like is called How Music Works by David Byrne. It's not necessarily a biography, but it's David Byrne talking about music. There's a bit about live music as well in it, but there's lots about recording studio and stuff like that. So just depends on what interests you, but I thought that one was really good. I love this biography. It's Keith Richards. It's just unbelievable how touring was like in the 70s. So it's not like you're going to get tips from it on how to do it now, but it's just a good fun to read. And then there's stuff as well that might help you in your career. So like I became self-employed, so I got this book, Small Business Accounting, just on how do you do a tax return, how do you keep track of expenses. So those things are handy as well if you're thinking of getting self-employed and you have time now. Why not read up on how you do all that stuff? There's magazines, for example, Guitar Magazine. I bought this one because it had a bit in it about guitar tech, and it has loads of tips on how to look after guitars, which, you know, I want to work more as a backline technician, so that's super helpful for me. And there's also just music magazines that just talk about band record releases and gigs, and that might not necessarily be relevant, but it's good to kind of know what's happening in the industry. It's good to know, like, you know, what artists are playing what kind of gigs and festivals, and it's good to be kind of knowledgeable about that stuff. And then the last thing I want to mention, which might be a bit off topic for you, but I think mental health is really important in the music industry more than ever. Working live music is really stressful. You work really long days. You don't get a lot of sleep. You don't sleep in your own bed for long, like weeks on end. It's hard to like keep friendships and relationships because, you know, communications are often via text. I mean, look at the lockdown now. That's basically how music crew work normally. Like, you don't get to see anyone for a long time. So all of that, it kind of works like with mental health. It's not great. There's great initiatives out there that are researching and offering help, like music support. So one thing that you can kind of read up on or get used to are things like how to look after yourself and mindfulness. There's apps like what's it called? Oh, now I forgot about it. There's this famous app for mindfulness. If you can get used to using something like that, because it can kind of ground you and you can sort of stop worrying about things while you're on tour. One of my favorite books on that is a book called Self-Compassion. I know it really looks like one of those books that you go into the bookstore and you kind of wear sunglasses while you go into the self-help section. But it's a really amazing book. And self-compassion is like about, well, how to have compassion for yourself and deal with stressful situations or deal with trauma or anything like that. So I got loads of like really great stuff from that, because, you know, working in music, you might come across things that are you didn't expect, or there might be, you've been in like a bit of a dangerous situation, you're on the road all the time, or sometimes accidents happen in work, or, you know, there's different dynamics between people. You might meet someone that's not as nice to you as you were to them, that kind of stuff. It's good to kind of know how you take care of yourself, and you can take that with you when you do those jobs. When I'm on tour, I like to be honest about mental health with whoever I work with. So I will be helpful if someone in my group is struggling. Like I've just had instances, I don't want to say or name anything because that's personal, but like, you know, try and be there for each other. And whenever I felt stress, it's like, you know, take the time to, if you have the opportunity, you have a hotel room, to like take a bath, because it's like a moment where you can't be on your laptop checking emails. You just have to sit there and just feel warm and be relaxed. Or on a day off, if you don't feel like socializing and going sightseeing with some of the group, and you have time, why not say, hey, I just want to be alone for a few hours. Just be honest about it and go off on your own, because you kind of need that time for yourself. So those are a few things that I do. But I generally like to keep the spirits high. Like, even if some other people in the group are maybe having a tough time, or they're complaining a lot, which has happened before, not necessarily complaining about the tour, but just going like, oh, this is uncomfortable, or I just try and not engage with sort of a bad mood. I just try and turn it into something positive. So yeah, while you're in lockdown and you are thinking about that kind of stuff, books like that might be helpful, and you might take away something from that. So yeah. What you can also do during the lockdown is online networking, which I know is more difficult than when you meet someone in person. It's a lot different. But in these webinars, like, often the host shares their email address. Why not save it and get in touch if you have a genuine question or you want to get to know someone? Like, if they share it, it means that you can use it. Don't think, oh, it'll be an inconvenience, because they've shared it. So they want you to get in touch. There's groups and collectives you can join, just like Women in Live Music. There's more groups that are aimed at women as well, like Sound Girls and Noe. But there's also other groups that are just general, which is like UK touring crew, event productions. There's a few in the US if you ever sort of cross over. But also every now and again, an American person in the US group will post, we need someone in Europe. So that could be handy as well. So it's good to join groups and keep an eye, even if you might not now be looking for work, or there are no gigs anyway. It's good to join them early to kind of see what the vibe is, because you will notice that different groups have different ways that people kind of respond to each other. And in some of the groups, they like to joke around a bit more. In other groups, they're a bit more helpful. So it's good to kind of get a general vibe from a group and join them early, and just be a spectator for a little while until one day you need to ask for help, or, you know, you apply for a job. So that's good as well. Follow industry people with a public profile. So on social media, don't just sort of cold call, add people that work in the industry that you haven't met before. But there are some people like music managers as well, but also touring crew or touring photographers, people like that, who have like a business profile, and it's absolutely fine to follow them on that. And it can be a way of like seeing what they do, and maybe sometimes you can interact and get to know someone. There's definitely people that I've met while on tour that I've connected with through their sort of public profiles like that, and we've stayed in touch and check in with each other. I have one, so I have a private personal Instagram that I don't want anyone to follow me who doesn't know me, but then I have a business public Instagram as well, which I'll post in the chat, so you can follow me if you want. And I just post about business in there. I'm not going to put anything personal. And so I'm happy to stay in touch with people via that way. And create a contact spreadsheet. So you might get those business cards when you talk to people, or an email address from someone you worked with, but then one day you'll think, ooh, I want to get in touch with that person, and then you can't find it back. It's really good to keep a spreadsheet and to make one. If you have time now, make it with all your contacts, and like make them into groups like festivals, managers, artists, or whatever the groups are that you need. So when there is a day where you need to get in touch, that you know where to find them. That's really good. And practice with fictional examples. So right now, if you've got time, why not make some documents that are useful for the future? For example, make a pack list of if you were to go and work at a festival and you had to stay there on the campsite for a few days, or if you were to go on a tour, why not write out a pack list right now with like important things that you will need to think of? So when that day comes and you are invited to do that, you can just pick it up and tweak it, and you have a pack list. Why not, you know, do like a fake merch count in and count out? If you don't want to do it on your own, like ask someone you met in here or wherever to tell you, you know, this is my merge rings. I've got a black t-shirt and a white t-shirt, and I'm selling key rings, and this is how much they are, and this is how much I've brought. And then you fill out a merch sheet, you create it yourself, you put in your own formulas in Excel, you befriend Excel, which is really important. I had to learn that. And then, you know, do a count out and see if all your formulas were correct and have someone check it for you. Like, what's keeping you from practicing with anything like that? And as well, like, make a fake day sheet. Ask someone to tell you what venue you're playing at, what time the show is. And then you make a day sheet for that and send it to them, and they can check whether you've included all of that information. And once you've practiced with that, when the day comes that you actually need that, you can just pick it back up and check it. And the same for making a fictional production and or hospitality riders. Yeah, same thing. And then create a music industry CV. So I think whenever you apply for a job, anyway, you kind of want to tailor your CV to the job that you're applying for, which has been tricky now as well during the lockdown. Many music industry people who have gone, how do I translate my touring skills to an actual CV? Now I'm applying for a job in Tesco or funeral care, or I've seen many different people going in different jobs now. You kind of mold it into what you're applying for. So if you have never worked a paid music job, you've done some volunteering, or you're about to do some volunteering for the first time, think of all the things that you've done, whether that was paid or voluntary or even in school, where you think those are skills that would help for me to do that job. So a friend, he was asked to be a merchandiser on a tour. He had a little bit of experience, but not a lot. But he was asked to send a CV before they actually hired him. Like, they wanted him, but to make things proper, they wanted him to send a CV. So he was like, what do I put on my CV? Because I haven't really sold merchandise that much. He was a barman. So I was like, put in your bar job and like describe, like, in your bar job, you know how to handle cash, you've done card payments, you've been able to recommend stuff to people who come up to the bar. And the same goes for merchandise. Like, you need to handle cash, you need to do card payments, you need to recommend merchandise. There's all kinds of things that you can put in your CV that makes it look great for a music industry job. You just need to keep that in mind when you make that CV. And feel free to like ask someone to check it for you. Like, lots of people are not doing anything right now. So, you know, don't be shy about that. And then with the CV as well, like, think about questions you could be asked in an interview, which is what I've said before about stuff that you learn in volunteer roles. You will be able to talk about in interviews. So I now have my go-to if someone asks, what did you do to exceed expectations for a customer? I have a go-to answer for that because I've been asked that before. And, you know, you can find, if you Google it, you can probably find like most asked questions in job interviews. Things like, you know, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, actively write those questions down and think about the examples that you have from your life, from your work, from your school, that would be applicable to music industry, and answer them in that way. Like, it's good to be prepared for those kind of questions. So yeah, if you are wondering what you can do right now, there's some really good sort of practice things that you can do. So yeah, and it looks like that's the end of it. So are there any questions?
I am just going to have a quick look. Actually, most of the questions I think that we have had in the chat have actually been answered by you. So
Okay.
Yeah, really good. And even all the questions I have basically been answered. Like, it was really comprehensive presentation. Thank you. One thing I think that I saw Adriana ask is if there was, I think you might have mentioned already some groups, but are there any specific groups for festival volunteering that you can recommend?
Ooh, I think there's a page called Work at Festivals or Festival Jobs, and that is generally more aimed towards volunteering and like bar jobs and stewarding jobs. So it's like festival jobs in a sense of like the kind of, you know, student type jobs rather than you work as a stage manager or whatever. I think it's called Festival Jobs, which is a page and not a group. I've just put in the comments my Instagram and my website. And a good one, Rebecca will be able to confirm that. There are groups for festival volunteers. Am I still sharing my screen? No.
Oh, sorry, I just stopped it.
So once you volunteer at a festival, loads of them have their own volunteer group. So for example, if you volunteer at the Great Escape, then they will have a Great Escape volunteer group. And, you know, everyone will be talking about the festival you're going to work at. But once that's done and throughout the year when there's not much going on, people will go, oh, our friends from, I don't know, Reading Festival have asked if anyone's interested in volunteering, and they post the details in that group. So it's always good looking up a sort of group like that where there's already a sort of big group of people that are volunteering together, and loads of opportunities will be reposted in that group as well. And that's how I found lots of different other opportunities too. So yeah.
Great. That's fantastic. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But yeah, I think you've covered so much. It's even I learned so much actually.
I wasn't rambling on too much.
No, not at all. Do you think there's ever a point where we stop volunteering, or is it something that maybe we should carry on doing, even if we consider ourselves successful in our career choices, in our fields?
Definitely. I think the best people are the ones that never stop learning. Like, if you think you know everything, then I think that's when you get stuck. So if you never stop learning and you keep kind of being open and going, I'll go and help someone for free, or, you know, I'm going to join someone to look at this or that, and you be open-minded, that's definitely the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes it's hard to, you know, have almost the confidence to put yourself back into a position where you say, hey, you know, I don't know anything about this. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so if no one has any more questions, I'm going to wrap this up by saying thank you so much to Nathalie Candel for doing this amazing presentation. Next week, we are going to be doing a webinar all about production coordination with Olga Koenig from Germany, which is going to be really interesting because she has a lot of experience working with very different productions. And then the week after, we have a webinar all about backline. So I hope you guys can join us for those ones. And yeah, have a good week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.